Hello, and thank you for joining us for this panel. Originally presented at the Payments Canada Summit, I'm delighted to be joined by an excellent lineup of panelists to talk about payment file validation, the service you didn't know you needed until now. This revolutionary ISO 20022 enabled service is used by financial institutions to help better simplify and automate the testing of their corporate to bank payment files. But rather than have me go on and on about in great detail about what payment file validation service is, PFVS for short, you're going to be hearing it a lot during today's session. Let's hear from the experts. My name is Carl Lee, and I'm a senior ISO 20022 analyst here with Payments Canada, and I have the great pleasure of being joined on this panel with Hyundai Kalkimir, who is the lead payments file validation service at Payments Canada. We have Antero Manpa, he's the service lead at XMLdation, and we have Ted Winter, senior manager, business payments at Royal Bank of Canada. Thank you for joining us today. Appreciate it. And you know what? Let's just get right into it. Hyundai, I'm going to start with you. Can you let us know what PFVS is and how it came to be?
Sure. Thanks, Carl. We offer PFVS to financial institutions like the RBC as a response to their need in efficiency in payment file validation process and to support industry's migration to the ISO 20022 messaging standard. During an industry event in 2017, much like the Payments Canada Summit, we happened to be seated next to another Canadian financial institution listening to a presentation about a file validation solution used in Europe for their transition to ISO 20022. The awe and the sentiments we heard from this FI at the time made it clear that Canada needed a similar solution and fast. We partnered with XMLdation as our vendor and a few other Canadian financial institutions to tailor a similar solution for Canada, and PFVS was born in 2018. PFVS is a turnkey solution that automates the validation of corporate to bank payment files. It essentially works as a spell checker for these files. It can validate any type, ISO or legacy format, validating against overarching standards and banks' own business rules. It can also simulate bank to corporate response messages for these files. PFVS is designed to reduce the time and effort required to ensure client-generated payment files are correct during the client onboarding process at financial institutions. So we do the work ahead of time before the client gets onboarded to financial institution systems. I believe that listening to the rest of the panel today will help change your mind about the need for automation at payment file validation.
Oh, that's awesome. And it's really awesome to hear that this service actually came not from us trying to create it, but it's actually from the industry asking for it and us providing it to them. That's great. So now that we know what PFVS is, I think I would like to understand kind of how it works. So, Antero, seeing as your Payments Canada's service delivery partner for the PFVS, can you explain how the system works in the background?
Yeah, sure, of course. So a large question, of course. So I'll focus on the validation aspect of the PFVS and how things work. So there are two key components on the background on what really powers PFVS when it comes to validation, and that is schema and also individual validation rules. So these are kind of linked together, meaning that in order for us to build individual validation rules, we need to have a schema there on the background. So schema like that usually comes from ISO 20022, but it can be from really any source. The source doesn't matter to us really. Like for example, if we are dealing with legacy formats, then we would be the ones building the schema ourselves. And a great thing about the schema as well is that it already includes a lot of the rules and restrictions there are in a payment type. So that does a bit of the work for us already. But of course, having only schema it wouldn't be enough because business rules exist. And that's why we have the second component, so the individual validation rules. So these are written by using a specific programming language. And to be honest, they are individually almost always very, very simple to write, but they are complex when dealing with them as a whole. And that's really like one of the beautiful aspects of PFVS is that we are able to handle like very many of those validation rules in a single payment type. So they are quite easy for us to adjust and add more as the time goes on. So indeed, to recap, schema and individual validation rules are really the bulk. And then we, of course, have dev team on the background with monthly updates and service development and so on. And that's pretty much it.
Nice, awesome. That sounds good. So how I understand it, then you are doing schema level checks, which is kind of like the whole message, and then you could customize it for business validation if a client would like a specific type of validation, correct? Awesome. And so maybe, and then honestly, to be honest, I'm not very technical, so a lot of it just fly over my head. But I'm pretty sure the technical folks watching would really have enjoyed that detail that you just provided. And Hyundai, I think you have something to show us about PFVS and how it works in practice. So maybe the business related people might want to see this.
Exactly. Yes, Carl. So PFVS is an extremely efficient and a simple to use tool. And indeed, we have prepared a short video to showcase some of the main functionality. So let's watch together. PFVS is accessed through a dedicated web page. A user with administrator privileges enters their username and password to sign in. Landing page includes a top navigation bar with all the functionality like the validation and simulation, a welcome section with customizable elements like the logo and welcome text, an information section with guides such as MIGs. To validate a file, user can browse and upload or copy-paste the file in the text box. With the upload option, user browses for and selects the file. Then selects the validation type that matches the file format. Within seconds, the validation will run and display the validation results, showing if the file has passed or failed. A payment validation in PFVS has two levels: schema level validation and multiple layers of business rule validation. User can click on the report to see location and description of various notifications, such as an error which must be corrected, an info which is extra information and does not require correction, or a notice which is a recommendation for correction. Using the edit mode, user can easily locate and fix the error on the fly and revalidate their file to achieve a pass result. All the reports generated by the user during a session are accessible in the reports section and will be deleted upon logoff. User selects and puts two reports side by side to compare the differences. User can simulate a response by selecting a simulation scenario such as a payment status report. The simulation function enables the user to generate a simulated response from the bank to the input file. The file used should be correctly formatted at the schema level for the simulation to proceed. User selects and uploads their file, then clicks on the process button to run the simulation. Within seconds, the output is generated for preview or download. Admin tools can be used to see the list of users and add new ones. User clicks on a guest user to view or update user details. Guest users are bank clients. User can also manage permissions for the guests to access to specified validations and simulations. Once specific access is granted, guests then can start operating in the PFVS in self-serve mode. Clicking on the statistics option, user can set various filters and see the summary and detailed statistical reporting of the validations and simulations to monitor user activity.
That was a great video. It looked very easy to use. I know someone like myself probably will be able to use it no problem. And now that we have kind of what PFVS is, how it works, I think now the best person to go to is Ted from RBC, who uses PFVS. Ted, why does RBC use PFVS?
Well, it came down to RBC looking for efficiencies in our onboarding process and creating a better onboarding experience for our clients. Before we had the PFVS, our onboarding team would review client test files manually, and this could take a day or two to get back to our clients with analysis and our comments. And this would be a back and forth processing, answering questions, explaining our business rules. And it wasn't good for the client or the bank. It took a lot of time when managing multiple clients and was a bottleneck in our onboarding process. With the use of the file validation process, this validation process just takes seconds. We started using the PFVS in our Interact e-transfer, bulk request money, and bulk payable services, and our payables direct service. We were trying to shrink that onboarding time to help clients make the most of their IT resources. That it may be consultants or offshore resources. We want to allow clients to test quickly when they want it. We're using the PFVS to launch our new integrated payables direct service. Our file types have been added to the PFVS for clients to test against, and these include ISO 20022 and messages and non-ISO files as well. We're enrolling each client in the PFVS, and they will upload their file and receive the validation report back. And they can correct errors in flight using the edit feature and revalidate their file until they get a successful file. Once they get that green check mark on their file, we know they have a good file, and the process is a lot faster because now we know that they have a good file going into their end-to-end testing.
Nice. So I'm glad that it helped with some of your pain points. I'm glad that it sounds like it's more efficient now, which is amazing, the whole process in itself. So PFVS really did help in those cases. I kind of want to switch gears a little. I just want to bring this back to Hyundai, something you said earlier in today's session about PFVS being a subscription service. And I'm curious, and I'm pretty sure the viewers are going to be curious, if they want to become a subscriber, how does the onboarding process look like? How long does it take? And what makes it in your eyes a successful onboarding process?
Yeah, great question. Thank you, Carl. In my opinion, the key to successful PFVS onboarding is collaboration to maintain a positive client experience throughout the journey. And in terms of what we do to achieve it is we start the collaboration process early on, as early as the subscriber or the potential subscriber's decision-making process. The following product demo, we deliver a detailed presentation about the application architecture, security, roles and responsibilities, benefits, baseline costs, timelines to support the potential subscriber build a business case for their executive buy-in. Legal teams on both Payments Canada and the subscriber end work collaboratively to finalize and fine-tune and finalize the details of the PFVS subscriber agreement for execution. And we manage the entire subscriber onboarding process. I should tell you, it's definitely a team effort. In case of RBCs, we got all parties aligned with a kickoff meeting between RBC, Payments Canada, and XMLdation. Our first goal was to scope out RBC's requirements. What are the file types RBC wanted to include with the implementation? We then continued with weekly technical calls to track progress, also to clarify RBC's message implementation guidelines, specifications, business rules, so that we can build all of those in. We worked with XMLdation to set up an RBC PFVS environment, and we promoted in phases the validation types and simulation scenarios they would like to be included. that initial implementation was for RBC's own testing. And obviously we collected feedback. The end goal here was to create a unique, a wholesome PFVS RBC environment, customized with RBC logo, welcome text, the validations and simulations that they wanted to offer to their clients, also their message implementation guidelines. We wanted to achieve, and we did achieve, this whole environment that has everything a client would need to operate in. In terms of the second part of your question, a typical onboarding to PFVS takes about 12 to 16 weeks, depends on the complexity of obviously the payment types, but typically it's about that much. And I have to say that you'll hear from the rest of the discussion, this customer-centric approach, the collaboration never stops. It has continued to evolve since inception. Thank you.
Nice. I like to hear collaboration. Everyone likes to get collaboration and all working together to achieve one goal. And 12 to 16 weeks for onboarding, that's amazing. It seems like such a short period of time just to get everyone on board on an application. And so that's from a Payments Canada point of view. Intro, seeing as you're the service delivery partner, what's your role within this whole subscription implementation process?
Yeah, sure. So like when we start an implementation project for a subscriber, for a bank, well, that really is the bulk of the work what we have. And to take a step back, by that point, we would have been done with analysis phase by ourselves already. So we would have a good idea already on what the payment types are, meaning that we would understand them. And in the cases where there are sections in the implementation guide, for example, which we don't really understand, then we would have a list of questions ready by that point. So when we start a project with a bank, then during those first couple of meetings, couple of weeks, we would collaborate quite heavily then with the bank, so we can ensure that well, we simply understand the payment type. And that's why it's important for us to be able to talk to the right people from the bank as well. So to be able to talk to Ted, really, for example, in the RBC case. And next, so we would be starting to build the validation types. And yeah, indeed, like Hande mentioned, that will take a couple of weeks, total, more than a couple in case there are multiple validation types to be built. And our goal is to get the first few validation types out and test ready as soon as possible, because it's also in our best interest and to be able to start receiving feedback for those first few validation types. So that's also where we would need collaboration with the bank to be able to test those first types. So yeah, can be busy initially. It'll get a bit easier for us then as the time and the weeks go by.
Of course. And you being on all the calls, actually interacting with the banks themselves, getting questions from the right people at TED. And speaking of TED, you went through RBC's onboarding of PFVS. Can you let us know from a subscriber perspective what the process was like on your end?
Yeah. First, we had to get buy-in from our executives. We explained the features of the PFVS and benefits to the client and the bank. This was the easy part. The current operating model was just not sustainable, and the PFVS provided so many benefits to the client, like 24/7 testing, a full explanation of the errors, a wiki help, and simulation, creating just a better overall client experience. Plus, it benefits the bank from faster time to revenue, more completed projects, and the ability to handle more clients at once, and a more efficient use of our onboarding resources by automating a previously manual process. I worked with our legal team to review the PFVS subscriber agreement and got their buy-in. And then I was able to get the executive signatures that I needed. We created a client user guide for the service and an internal administrator guide based on Payments Canada's material. I worked with our legal again to create our RBC terms and conditions that the clients would click through the first time they logged into the service. And lastly, we updated our enrollment forms and procedures and did some internal training.
Sounds like a lot of work. It sounded like a little bit more work for you because not only are you dealing with the vendor and Payments Canada, like XMLdation and Payments Canada, you now have to include your clients and make sure that they're able to use it properly. But it does sound like you're benefiting from it for sure. And I think you've been a subscriber for 4 years, so it must be doing something right. And I was hoping you could let us know, since you've been doing it for 4 years, what does a day-to-day operations look like with using PFVS?
Well, from a customer perspective, they're experiencing a faster validation process by leveraging that 24/7 platform, allowing their project resources to schedule their testing based on their availability. Once a client achieves a passing file, they can proceed to the simulation feature, which will generate a pane 002 payment status report simulation to allow the client to consume that production like PSR and test their ability to ingest and reconcile those files. At this point, our onboarding team is re-engaged and the client can move to the bank's test environment with a valid test file. Because of this self-service capability and the client starts testing with a valid file, this repetitive testing requirements are eliminated. From the bank perspective, when launching new services with Payments Canada and XMLdation to build, we work with Payments Canada and XMLdation to build out the requirements and the bank specific business rules in the PFVS. We then use the PFVS internally to test, which allows us to capture and track client progress and get feedback prior to product launch.
So we've been talking about PFVS and how it's so client-centric, and that kind of makes sense to me, right? Like we're trying to build a product that helps your clients make it a little bit easier, and you're talking 24/7, which is amazing because it allows the client to work on their own time, and you don't have to impede on them when they could test. And so I'm going to ask one thing now, from a Payments Canada perspective, how do you help subscribers like RBC achieve all of these goals that they want with their clients?
Sure, Carl. So customer experience drives the value proposition of the PFVS. So our efforts are really focused on supporting the subscriber in this regard. There are, I would say, two distinct ways we do this in. First one being we offer the PFVS for use to its full potential. What I mean by this is PFVS improves the client experience through FI, like the RBC, enabling client self-serve testing. As Ted mentioned, their clients are then self-guided with these validation reports showing exactly where the error is, what they can do to fix it, and they have the ability to fix it on the fly. While the FI is simply monitoring their progress. This whole monitoring provides the FI a clear view of where to focus, where the issues are. What I mean again by this is the PFVS allows for testing in PFVS allows for the errors in the payment files or potential issues with ingesting the responses back from the bank to be identified and addressed before the client is onboarded to FI's platforms. And I believe this is really the driver. And the insight to these challenges, when we're trying to address these in PFVS, the insight to these challenges helps the FI determine how best they can modify their implementation guidelines so that they're communicating their requirements more clearly. And the second way is the dedicated day-to-day full-time support. Again, what I mean by this is we guide RBC product managers with ongoing training and support so that they can help their clients use the PFVS to its full potential. We handle issue and incident management as well as monthly patching. We continuously enhance our product offering so that PFVS is upkept to the industry standards. We meet with RBC on a bi-weekly basis to review any client observations and to make necessary rule updates in the PFVS. And if RBC would like to introduce new payment types, for example, we intake new work in the same agile fashion that Antron mentioned about. So the dedicated support, once again, never ends. It's built into the subscription service. So as you have heard so far, a subscriber is supported in every step of the way to fully drive the value of the PFVS.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense completely, right? We're here to help our subscribers provide this great service to their clients, and what better way than to always be ready and waiting for any questions or concerns that they may have. That's perfect. And so from your perspective from XMLdation, how are you involved in the day-to-day operations?
Yeah. So I am, and we are. So, and it interestingly depends on the subscriber and also on the level of maturity of the validation types and the payment types. Then of course. So if the payment types are very mature and there are no changes required to them anymore, then that means that we don't have to mirror those changes in the PFVS either. So then, that means that things are kind of up and running and working, of course, on the background. But then if there is a case that we have just finished a large project, for example, for a new payment type, then it's quite realistic to assume that there will be a couple of changes still which we need to do and adjustments to be done as well. So in those cases, we would have like a more heavier involvement, meaning that we might have weekly calls, for example. We would potentially update the validation types once a week, a couple of times a week, even if that's required. So day to day, it depends, but we usually do have quite an active role in the background.
That's good to hear, because it's not just a once and done for you. You're not just implementing and then wiping off your hand and say, I'm done. You're always involved. You're always in it. That's great. And I just want to be conscious of time here. And we're going to try to wrap it up here. But before we do wrap it up, if there's one key message that you would like to leave with the viewers today, what would that be? Ted, I'll start with you.
Well, PFVS improves the client experience with the ability to use a self-service tool and make the most of their IT resources. It puts clients in control of their testing. It also benefits the bank with operational efficiencies, resulting in faster revenue growth. I really value the collaboration that we have with the PFVS team.
Nice. Andrew?
Yeah, sure. So what really motivates me is seeing how PFVS is helping actual people, because at the end of the day, I think that really is the goal, to be able to make people's lives a bit easier.
Definitely. Hande?
Thank you, Carl. Yeah, I want to leave everyone with mentioning that we offer PFVS as a response to the demands of DFIs like you to alleviate your pain points, and we'll make it as easy as possible to transition you into using the PFVS. So I would suggest that you speak with your payment product managers, business banking teams, implementation managers about what you heard in this panel today. They need this tool more now than ever.
Definitely. Thank you, Hande, Andrew, and Ted, for an excellent discussion. And thank you to the viewers for tuning in. If you'd like to learn more about PFVS and what we've talked about, please visit our website at payments.ca. There's all this information there, and the contact information is there as well. Thank you so much again, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you, panelists.